Communism is the idea of freeing the working man from his rich overlord. The idea for an equal world where no one is judged based on class. The perfect utopia. Is it a perfect utopia though? A question like that is open for interpretation, but that's not what I am here for. Communism is a form of socialism. Socialism being the idea of a non-privatized economy. So what exactly are these two? Are they related? I aim to help explain this to you the best I can. This is a complex ideology that has taken many forms and is not easy to explain. So get comfortable for the lecture I have for you today, as this is a complex one. In this video, I will explain what communism is as an idea, its appeal, its implementation and practice, and how communism works in the modern world. So, what is communism? Communism, according to Britannica.com, is the political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property and a profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control of at least the major means of production and natural resources of a society. Communism is a form of socialism, like I explained earlier. Socialism being the idea of public property and public ownership of natural resources. According to Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, the modern bourgeois society creates this class mentality of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Marx argued that the bourgeoisie oppressed the proletariat through economic control, the bourgeoisie being the big rich people, the people who own the means of production, the proletariat being the labor workers. Karl Marx compares this modern class idea to the class ranks seen in history. The Roman Republic with the patricians and plebeians, the Middle Ages with the kings who ruled over the vassals and serfs/peasants. Karl Marx argues that this class problem creates this hostile split within, saying antagonism is created due to the social classes. What communism aims to get rid of is the social classes of the modern world and create a public society for the people. This idea of a classless society is why Marx always talks about the bourgeoisie and proletariat extensively within his manifesto. This idea of a public society for the people was, and still is, very enticing to many throughout history. In theory, it promises equality, but communism is a theory. Why did many want it as a government?
We are America's communist generation. We are America's working class, and we will overthrow capitalism in our lifetime.
The idea of communism promises to bring equality to the people. Who wouldn't want that? The idea of the state splitting the money and goods among the people equally so there are no rich and there are no poor. Communism is popular among the younger generation. Education.cfr.org states that in 2020, 28% of Gen Z favors communism, with the latter generations lowering in favor of the ideology. The silent generation are only 3% in favor of the ideology in 2020. So why the divide? Education.cfr.org suggests that the younger generations focus on the beliefs and ideas rather than the history or implementation. The same source suggests that the older generations tend to dislike communism more due to its implementation and history. Older generations focus on how communism was implemented. Some of the most extreme examples include the millions of deaths associated with the implementation of communism. With communist revolutions not being the norm anymore, younger generations look more into the idea of a classless and public economy. This appeal has grown really strong, mostly in history. Historically, communism also gained support in societies facing extreme inequality and instability. Countries such as Russia during World War I were having problems with the class divide. Serfs still worked in Russia, creating the class divide Marx spoke about in the Communist Manifesto. The split between the bourgeoisie and proletariat was very prevalent in the Russian Empire. Along with widespread corruption and the raging war in Europe, the October Revolution eventually broke out in 1917. So what was so enticing about it all? The idea of a public economy and equality? The idea of not being oppressed by the bourgeoisie, as Marx would argue? There is no one true reason for someone to like communism. But what about its implementation? Communism has been implemented in many states in a variety of ways. One very popular one being the October Revolution of 1917, like I mentioned earlier. The October Revolution took place in Russia during the First World War. On October 24, 1917, Russian radicals known as the Bolsheviks rose up in Petrograd, the capital of Russia at the time, what is now known as St. Petersburg. The Bolsheviks were successful in controlling the city, but there still stood one important building, the Winter Palace. Ever since Tsar Nicholas II's abdication, a provisional government took power in place. The provisional government operated from within the Winter Palace. But the provisional government of Russia had no troops to defend them. This lack of protection led to the storming of the Winter Palace by Bolshevik troops. After the October Revolution, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was proclaimed. When the Soviet government was implemented, it was, in theory, meant to adhere to the farmers and workers. However, in practice, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, also known as the CPSU, became the central authority. So the Communist Party held ultimate authority over political decisions. The state carried out policy, but the party decided policy. Rather than relying on markets, the economy was centrally planned by the state. The Soviet government was complex, so I'm going to save myself the hassle of explaining it all here. This is not a video about the Soviet Union. Right now, I am only explaining an example of communism being implemented and used. The implementation of communism produced mixed results, with some successes and significant challenges. The economy was planned, meaning the state decided the production of what to make, how much to make, and where. The Soviet economy benefited from rapid industrialization, but often failed to meet everyday consumer needs. The Soviet government had limited political freedoms. They prioritized political stability and ideological unity. The CPSU was the only political party. Free speech and press was also restricted within the Soviet Union. This wasn't bad from their perspective. The Soviets prioritized political stability and ideological unity for the protection of the revolution. And although communism aimed to end the class division, a new political elite emerged within the system. Even with the positives, there are still negatives. But how are there still communist nations even after the collapse of the Soviet Union? Communism is still used by some countries in our day and age. Communism has waned in numbers ever since the dissolution of the Soviet Union and its satellites/allies of the Eastern Bloc. Communism no longer governs any widely known European governments. Although states such as Transnistria exist, it has little recognition from governments around the world. The Americas only have one communist country, that being Cuba. Cuba has always been a thorn in the underbelly of the United States ever since the Cold War. Communism is most popular in Asia, with countries like Vietnam, Laos, North Korea, and China. In the Americas, Cuba tends to have challenges in terms of economy. According to econlib.org, not only is it because of the US embargo of Cuba, but the regime's own policies. But countries like Vietnam have turned to more of a humanist regime, even with its history and the Communist Party being the only legal party. So results of modern-day communism vary. But what about China? China's government is ruled over by the Chinese Communist Party, most famously known as the CCP. While historical leaders such as Mao Zedong were known as the chairman, current leaders of the Communist Party in China are known as the General Secretary of the CCP. Not only does the General Secretary lead, he is a part of a 7-member inner circle of sorts made up of him and 6 others. The economy of China differs from the idea of a quote-unquote free market. China's economy is state-led, but still has a market of some kind. The economy of China is that of a socialist market economy. There are elements that are planned, but much of it acts similar to those of a capitalist economy in a way. This means China is communist, but it differs from the revolutionary communism envisioned by those of Marx or Lenin.